Hey everyone, Curse Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks assisted, and here we are with one of our donation decks of the week, Apothecary White. This deck comes from Lexa, who says, here's another one of the interesting clue commanders. Not 100% sure if I'm finding the food half and the human half of the deck synergizing, but I think there's some good core ideas here. And I agree, I really do like the direction of this deck, and I think there's a lot of fun things we can do with it. Thank you so much, Lexa, for supporting the channel. And honestly, I think the clue commanders are really, really cool. There are things about this like out of universe stuff that I don't really like, but it's given the designers some space to put together some really interesting commanders and some really interesting creatures that we get to play around with, some design space we haven't seen before. And I'm really grateful for that. And I think, though I'm not too sure how available these cards are going to be, it seems like Apothecary White, for example, is just 12 bucks. That's not too bad. I hope the numbers are available and it's not too hard, because these are the kind of things that, I think people will enjoy playing with. I will say, I think I might wait for the more... this is the magic card version, right? There's no way of making Apothecary White into a different name without it. You don't need to make it more magic related. It kind of already is if you don't know the clue background. But with that in mind, let's get to it. If you'd like to take a look at the deck list we're talking about today, or if you'd like to submit your own deck list to me so that I can make a video assisting your deck, please check the video description down below. So before we get any further, who is Apothecary White, and why are they our mono white food, I'm going to say food humans commander? Apothecary White is 4 mana, mono white human cleric, a 3/4 with vigilance, which I'm going to say is very, very good stats. Something I've noticed a lot in more recent legendary creatures is I feel like Wizards has really pushed power and toughness a lot further. So we have creatures like Apothecary White, we'll read what else she does, but I will say, this is a very good utility creature that just happens to have a very good stat line that can attack very profitably. And that's just not something we see back in the day. And so these creatures and these commanders are just really, really strong by just having more and more good stuff just kind of stapled together. So she has 2 main abilities. The first one says whenever you attack, you create a food token for each player being attacked. So maximum 3, if you attack all 3 of your opponents, you'll get 3 food. And then she has an activated ability, which is 1 white, tap her, tap X untapped food tokens you control, and create X 1/1 white human creature tokens. So she is not only a token generator in the sense that she is creating food per attack, she is also an army in a can because she turns those food into humans. Now, this is honestly just incredibly powerful. Exponentially growing your... Is it even exponential? I always mess that word up. But growing your team by 3... Yeah, it is exponential because first one's 3, next one's 6, next one's 9. Every turn you're getting more and more of an army as long as you're devoting 1 mana to Apothecary White and getting your attacks in. Now, recently, I've been more and more of fans of creatures or commanders that have this kind of aggressive language of getting more, like a raid ability where you're getting more when you're attacking your opponents. If you've seen the pirate deck I created for a viewer that I now run myself because I love it, there's something like that there. If you've ever played Timna, if you've ever seen my Brina or ever played Brina, this is the same idea, right? It encourages you to attack multiple opponents, and it gets stronger and stronger with more opponents that you attack. So Apothecary White already has such good power by the fact that you're creating 3 tokens a turn, and the fact that she just creates, a bunch of tokens is just really, really good. I'm very impressed with her, and so there's a lot we can do with her. Looking at the list itself, I'm generally very impressed by it. I think there's a few things I want to pick on, but otherwise, as a whole, or at least as a first draft, I think it's in a very, very good place. Going through our lands, 36 lands feels very, very good for a deck like this. Our curve doesn't go indefinitely. Everything comes to dust, looks really, really intimidating, but it is a Convoke card, so it's not that bad. Looking at our curve, we can see we're a bit heavy on 3, and we are a bit heavy on 4, which will be the part I think I'll pick on the most, because I do think that we really want our commander to be out on 4 mana. And so having this many 4 mana drops, and I don't think all of them are as good as others, and we will go through this in a second. I think that's a bit much, and we can cut down a little bit. I will say, Lexa was wondering if the human side and the food side, if they jive well together, and I think they really do. And I will say, like, even if the only card that jives those two strategies together is White herself, I think that's fine, because that's an incredibly powerful ability, and the synergy coming through your commander, I think, is good enough. So let's start by picking at some of these cards and saying which ones I don't like, going through the 4 drops first. Obviously, our commander sticks, that's fine. Benny Brax actually has Convoke, so I don't consider him to be a 4-drop. He is also very, very good, so easy to keep. Baragon of the Guard. This one, I think, is definitely worth playing, especially because this works very well with attacking with all your creatures and then using Apothecary White after blockers have been decided, right? Because even if we're not creating, because we get the food tokens on attack, so we do get the maximum value, and then before damage, because she's already attacked, she has vigilance, we tap her down and we turn all of those tokens into a +1/+1 across the board. I do really, really like this. Now, I'm going to suggest in my additions the more powerful version of this card, but I do like the +1/+1 across the board. I like that it's humans, that's nice, but the stronger one is stronger. I will note that the gaining vigilance is only useful if you have, another human or Baragon come in before combat, so not just using White's ability, but I think that's really easy to do, so it's not too much of a problem. Build a Pony is the first card that I think is too much of just a synergy card and not enough of a helpful card. I will admit Build a Pony's ability to create two food tokens on ETB is rather good. The second ability is kind of meaningless, but I will say with the ease of access of creating, or the ease of the ability to create food in this deck, I really don't like the idea of paying 4 mana to just create a food. And I'm sure this is not the only time we're going to be saying this, but that is very much so how I feel. That it's easier just to create food out of White instead of paying 4 mana for a 1/4. A legendary creature is good, but it's a horse, so it's not on theme. And I don't think we have reasonable creatures that have way more toughness than attack, and we definitely don't. Like, at most, we're getting an additional 1 or 2 damage outside of Bill themselves, which we would get 3 more damage. And I don't think that's worth it. Ellen Harbree's Busybody is one I really like, and I think this is a very, very powerful ability, so I'm willing to keep her. She is a little clunky because I wish she had haste, and maybe that's something I should be suggesting is Lightning Greaves. We'll get back to that, but definitely Lightning Greaves to make that a little easier. But otherwise, she's just kind of a card advantage engine and at 4 mana. I don't know how much I like that. Benny Brax is nice because Benny Brax at least is at can be convoked out earlier, whereas I don't know, Ellen feels like we're paying the full mana and we need to continuously untap and create tokens, so she feels a little win more. That being said, that ability is hard to find in White, so I do want to keep her. Greymond, Avacyn's Stalwart. Greymond is interesting. I think this is a little all in on humans, especially because like these 2 abilities, First Strike, Vigilance, and Lifelink. What are the 2 we pick? I think we almost universally pick, there's a lot of snow outside. Our First Strike, and I think Lifelink? You're the aggro deck in a lot of ways, so maybe Vigilance is a little better, but Vigilance is already on your commander, so it really feels like you should be picking the other 2. And the life you gain from all these attacks will be enough to kind of offset any kind of defensive strategy you need. +2/+2 is substantial, but I do think I would enjoy this if it was 1 mana less or 1 mana more. At the 4 drop, the fact it only affects our humans, it feels a little too tight of a card to be on the same mana cost as our commander. Losarnok Captain. Tapping down creatures, creating tokens. I think this is okay. I think this is just okay. This feels a little cute. I do understand how this can be very, very good. But like this isn't like Chroma's what is our card? Chroma's Will, is it? Yeah. So like Chroma's Will at 4 mana, I would really like, because Chroma's Will straight up just says all your creatures are unblockable, double strike, flying, vigilance, indestructible, lifelink. Like if you have your commander out, you get all of this, and immediately that's usually 1 or 2 players out of the game. Whereas this is kind of like, don't get me wrong, this enables certain strategies where you can do the same thing, where you attack with your commander, you use White's ability, you tap down a bunch of creatures before blocks. This feels, I don't know, it feels a little clunkier because you're still setting up these kind of strange attacks where you're not going to be able to keep all your blockers up. You're going to have to kind of overcommit. I don't know. I don't like it, once again, at 4 mana, whereas Chroma's Will at least guarantees probably defeating an opponent with that double strike. This just lets you to get attacks through, which late game is good, but middle game, I don't know how much I like. I feel like a lot of the times she's going to be a 3-1 that puts out 1 or 2 tokens, tapping down 1 or 2 creatures, and is very reliant on your commander and being ahead. So to me, she's very, very win more. Mondrak is good. I do notice we are playing 2 of this spell, this ability. As I've said many times before, I generally like to have a version of this ability, not 2. I would say between the 2 of them, I'll leave it to you, actually. I think they're both fine. I think I like the creature more because of the indestructibility that we can get for one mana, and that it can attack. But there is downsides. Creatures are easier to deal with than enchantments, so leave that up to you, but I probably wouldn't play both. Phyrexian Vindicator, for sure, I don't think belongs here. This is a kind of a clunky card in this deck where you're straight up just playing this fairly and just smashing face with it. And much like Phyrexian Obliterator, I think this is just a 5/5 unblockable, right? Or it is a 5/5 moat, if you know the saying, where your opponents just won't attack into you. Now, Vindicator doesn't have the moat ability because Vindicator has flying, but no one's reasonably attacking into you while Vindicator is untapped. Same thing with Obliterator, no one's attacking to you while it's untapped. And that's a lot. Like, it's cool, but, you know, it's 4 mana for that, and it doesn't really work with the main strategy of the deck, so I would cut it pretty easily. Late to dinner, just play if you want the reanimation, just play something else. Mainly Jailbreak is the one I tend to suggest in white at 2 mana, but this is 4 mana. It creates a food. It's too much work to create this food. It's not worth it. And since we don't have ways to reasonably bin our own cards outside of a few cute things here and there, I don't think we're going to get the most out of it. I'm sure, like, the thing is, it's even if we have something like Underworld Cookbook to discard something, or I think I did see, I guess it's not in here. I was looking at the collection card, which creates treasures, but, you know, Witch's Oven, we Underworld Cookbook something, and then we reanimate it. The funny thing is, our biggest creature is 4 mana, so we're paying 4 mana for a 4 mana creature, and I don't particularly like that. I think we're just getting it at rate, which isn't ideal. Ariet's Tempting Apple is cute. It's fine. I think this is interesting that it gives us an ability we don't have access to in this color, but we can't, unless we have the cookbook out. Unless we have the oven out, we can't then sacrifice that creature that we steal. So it's a 2-card combo to just destroy a creature and to pay 4 mana for a food. I don't particularly like this. Once again, can be cut. Thousand Moons Smithy, I think this is at least a lot stronger. Creates basically a, what would you call it, a construct? It's better than a construct because it's creatures too. So it creates the Gnome Soldier, which is very good. And then, of course, we have a second side that is a land that is also just very, very good. So this is great. I think this is fine. It's strong enough. Coming down here in enchantments, Anointed Procession, I'd probably take it out. Crescendo of War is really interesting if it wasn't 4 mana. I really don't want it in here at 4 mana, just too much pressure. We're not playing enough mana rocks to even just justify having this many 4 drops. I think we just cut it. Food Coma is incredibly cute. What a cute card. I think this is playable, but it's just O-Ring with a food. And I guess the question is, once again, with all of these cards that are like, they cost 1 more mana to give you a food, I'd ask you a question. Would you play this in a non-food deck? And you'd probably answer no. And then I would ask, would you play this in a deck that already makes tons and tons of food? Like, for example, if you had this in hand and you had 20 food already, wouldn't you prefer this to be 1 less mana? I think you'd make that trade, right? You'd be like, okay, I'll cast it for 3, but I don't get a food token. Absolutely. And with that in mind, I think you'd just be happier with O-Ring because this, or O-Ring, yeah, it is O-Ring, or any of those kind of abilities to just exile or just another removal spell, instead of having this kind of more expensive spell to have a resource you already gain in abundance. So I would cut that for sure. Finally, Vault 101 Birthday Party. It has almost no synergy with food and a high synergy with aura and equipment cards. I think we are missing that, right? We have Field-Tested Frying Pan. Is Horn of Gondor an equipment? No. So that's it there. We have 1 piece of equipment. No, we also have the Haunch. And then we have 0 auras. So you are playing this card, a 4 mana card, to create a 1/1 white human soldier and a food token. You have a card that creates 1/1 soldiers and food tokens. It is your commander, which is much, much better than Vault 101 Birthday Party. Now, that being said, I am going to suggest at least 1 piece of equipment, maybe 2, I think. And if you wanted to go further and further into equipment or auras, this does get pretty good. This is a pretty good card, especially from graveyard or hand is really, really cool. Especially if we can let you cheat in much stronger equipment. I like that. As it is, don't play it. If you make the change, you can probably make the argument for it. I have a few more cards quickly to pick on, and then we will move on. Let's see. I'm trying to remember what they are offhand. Let's do it from memory. So Griffin Airy, I think, is a little too cute. I think the idea of this being 2 mana and then every time you crack a food on your turn, you create a 2/2, which means you are getting 2/2s for 2, right? They have flying, I will say that, but it's only on your turn and only if you have the mana. I just don't see this coming up. This is too much of a hoop to jump through to just get 2/2 flyers that aren't on your Kindred theme, right? So I don't think this is worthwhile. They are good attackers. I will say that. The fact that they can attack pretty profitably with evasion with white is really, really nice. But I do think we could probably do better. So I think this is one that's not too interesting to me. These 2 cards here, Visions of Glory, that creates a 1/1 human creature token for each creature you control. And everything comes to dust is actually fine. But Visions of Glory is a card I don't really like. It's very close to the definition of win more because, right, you are doubling your creature count with tokens. And if you don't have a reasonable creature count, then it doesn't particularly matter. It's just a dead card. I think there's also the problem of, so you cast this, let's say you have a big board. You cast this, you get 5 1/1s, one of your opponents wipe the board, you have no creatures. Well, that flashback gets so much worse. Like, the flashback is really cool because it brings you the idea that, like, you get to play this twice, but the answer to the first time you play it negates the second cast too, because now you don't have creatures, and now the flashback does nothing, right? And with that in mind, I think that's pretty bad. If it was like each token you control or something, I think that would be really, really cool. But as it is now, I don't think it is good enough. I think I will say both Underworld Cookbook and Witch's Oven feel kind of suspect without more synergies. Once again, I don't think you need the food that badly. Don't get me wrong, these are both very strong cards. Witch's Oven is weaker without the cat, and Underworld Cookbook is weaker without the pilot. But I will say Cookbook is a little stronger because it allows you to put cards in the graveyard to reanimate or to play with in other ways that you do have the means for. If you want to play Jailbreak, if you want to play a few more reanimation spells, you could make this happen. But as it is now, I think they're just kind of cute. I think a lot of the human side is mainly strong. And don't get me wrong, cards like the Gaffer, which is a card that pays off much like the Griffin Airy of gaining 3 life. You can tell the difference. Like the Gaffer is much stronger because it's 2 mana to gain 3 life, draw a card, and it's each end step. So a lot of these food synergies that we have are very, very strong, but the food synergies that just seem to create food are not as strong, and I don't like them as much. If there's any other one I'm going to pick on, I think maybe Book of Exalted Deeds. It does. Okay, so I do like this more than the Griffin Airy because a 3/3 white angel token is worth 2 mana. It is still your end step. Are we playing that card that is a shapeshifter? We are playing Mutavault. I think that's all we need. Yeah, so we can play our Mutavault and then exile it to enlighten our Mutavault, and then we can't lose the game as long as that card is on the battlefield. Now, traditionally, I don't see that as necessarily something that 100% keeps you safe. People do play Generous Gift, people do play Beast Within, but that is pretty safe. It can buy you some time. I think mainly, if you're going to play this card, you should use that first ability, and even then, I think it's kind of okay. I don't like it so much, but I'll leave it to you. Okay, those are my thoughts. The rest of the deck I do really, really like, especially the creatures going up to 3 mana especially are very, very strong, and I do really like this setup. I'm not suggesting it, but if going back to the equipment idea, if you wanted to introduce equipment here, or more than I'm going to suggest, you could go for like Stoneforge Mystic and a few other equipment-themed creatures, because I think you do have the room for them, but I'll leave that up to you to decide. So let's look into additions. This one's easy. You're playing Thraben Inspector. Novice Inspector is the same card. I think these cards are actually really, really good. They work really well with blink strategies. They work really well with additional artifact synergies. They do pay for themselves by giving you our card draw, and they are humans that we can grow and attack with. So I think they're pretty easy to throw in at very little opportunity cost. After that, something I really, really want you to play is Regal Bunnycorn. I want a few cards here that use the food tokens as not what they are literally as food, but as a permanent or artifact on the battlefield. And Regal Bunnycorn is one of these cards. Very straightforwardly, will grow into whatever number you have. And what I really like about the Bunnycorn is it works on both sides of White's abilities. So it counts both the artifact, the food tokens, and the humans that she produces, which means this creature gets really, really big, extraordinarily fast. Now, if you were once again thinking about going into like equipment, I think giving this trample, evade, flying, anything like that would make this into a very, very substantial threat into your deck. But even if you don't, I think this is going to be a very strong card that you can just start swinging out very, very quickly. This is even a card that, like, if you can reanimate a few times, you'll be very happy. This is just very, very strong. After that, I found Boromir notably missing out of here. We're in humans. It's a very strong sacrifice effect. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, that first half depends on your play group of whether or not. I keep having a hair, like a cat hair on me. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. If you have a very strong play group, that's a very strong ability. However, just that second text of protecting your entire board by sacrificing him, and he's a 3/3 vigilance human soldier, I think you're really happy with that. An easy inclusion here. Another one, I'll leave this up to you. Some people really don't like Undercity, or take the initiative, but White Plume Adventurer is just such a strong card, especially in mono white. The Undercity gives you some ability to get some abilities that mono white usually can't, even just straight up at Secret Entrance to get a plains into your hand is really nice. After that, I tend to go like, on the Lost Well side, traditionally going through Arena to Archives, just because I really do value card draw in mono white. Otherwise, you can go to Stash for Treasure or Catacombs. And then Throne of the Dead 3 is pretty good in this deck because of the large amount of creatures you have, especially a lot of them are very good utility creatures. So growing them and making them hexproof for the for the whole turn cycle is nice. I just like White Plume Adventurer, and this ability to consistently untap your creatures or a creature is also very strong. It doesn't work with white as well because the way she works is you tap down all your food. Even if you untap her, you need more food to untap. So that doesn't work as well, and she already has vigilance, so it's fine, but it allows you to attack or block better with the rest of your creatures. So something to consider. Teshar. Teshar caught my eye. I was thinking very much so that you have a very high concentration of historic spells. You have artifacts and you have a lot of legendary creatures. And if you wanted to go more into artifacts on the theme of artifacts matter with all of that food, Teshar gets even better. But the fact that you can just cast a legendary and reanimate a different legendary or a different 3 mana or less creature is really, really good. I think, honestly, being able to consistently reanimate Boromir, for example, is fantastic. If you get like Selfless Spirit as another example, same idea. Just keep protecting your board, and every time you cast your next legendary, which you have a lot, you just reanimate it, keep going. And I think that's very strong. All right, let's go into some equipment. Skull Clamp, also very notably missing here. You create 1/1s, Skull Clamp is the perfect companion to that. Not only does it give you a bunch of card draw that you're missing, it allows you to use 1/1s that maybe you're neutral or you are deadlocked out of the game, so you can draw a bunch of cards and figure out what you want to do. Idol of Oblivion, also notably missing. This is just, Benny Brax, but as an artifact and at 2 mana. Just turn after turn, you're just going to use it to draw an extra card. This card is very, very good when you can reliably create tokens, and you definitely can do that. I don't think I've ever used this 8 ability. I will say if you can constantly put him back on the battlefield, it is really, really nice. But a 10/10 isn't as meaningful as the giant army you're going to make. So for this, I think just generally just use it as a card draw ability. The other equipment I think I wanted to suggest is Nettlecyst. And this one's very straightforward. It's just like our Regal Bunnycorn, except for this is just artifacts or enchantments. So imagine it mainly off of food. Nettlecyst grows and grows depending on the number of food tokens and other artifacts and enchantments, which makes it very, very big. And the fact that this is a living weapon and we can just keep reattaching it to our tokens makes it just very, very good. I think this is an easy beater. Once again, I wish it had evasion. If you want to go deeper in equipment, give it trample or unblockable or flying or something like that. It'll get even better. But at the moment, I think, playing turn 2 Regal Bunnycorn into turn 3 Nettlecyst with the threat that you're then playing your commander and starting to grow your board really, really quickly. Because if you think about it, you play your commander turn 4, you attack with the Bunnycorn and the Nettlecyst at opposite opponents, and then you get at least 2. Who knows what your first turn was if you have another attacker. You get at least 2 food tokens, growing both of those +2/+2. I think that's fantastic. Both of these cards are really good. And if you wanted to go deeper into this, you could go and find some more construct tokens, like Urza Saga tokens is how I'm familiar with them, because they will go under the same rules and they will grow just at the same speed as Nettlecyst. So I wanted to talk about finishers. I think this deck is notably missing finishers. I will say, I just did think while we were going through these that I do think it's also notably missing any form of board clear. We do have Battle of Bywater. Maybe that's fine. Yeah, this is probably fine, but I think I would still wouldn't mind like Wrath of God or something, or what's our 5 mana? Our 5 mana, you pick something and all the power above it is destroyed. Can't remember that one, but any kind of 5 mana, there's not a lot of 3 mana, so 5 mana, board clear and white, you should be pretty happy with. I just wouldn't mind another kind of safety valve in this deck. But going back to our finishers, I would like some finishers that I think are a little more resilient than our 4 mana creatures. Cathar's Crusade is the one that comes to mind. Here is the spiel. I say the same spiel every time, where I feel like this is a very, very strong card, but it is a lot of work to keep it to keep track of it, especially with a commander that puts in so many tokens. You need a lot of dice and paper. Online, you'll be fine. Online, this will take care of itself, but in paper, it is kind of an effort to keep track of this. Sometimes you will get enough tokens that your opponents will just concede, but most of the time they do expect you to keep track of it. And with Cathar's Crusade, your creatures are going to get enormous very, very quickly and very, very dramatically. So this one's up to you. The alternative, because I wouldn't play both, is Divine Visitation, which is a lot easier to keep track of. It is also cheaper. Just turn all those 1/1 white humans into 4/4 flying vigilance, basically Sarah Angels that you're just going to sprawl across the board. And that one I think is generally enough. It's easier to keep track of. But if you are looking for, and I do think the evasion does matter, but if you are looking for the stronger one, I do think Cathar's Crusade is stronger, but Divine Visitation is accessible. So I would play either of those. And those are my general suggestions. I have a few more because I feel like I never say these, so I should say them anyways. These are just the good cards that you could play if you want to budget for them. Mother of Runes, Mom is always good in human decks and at white mana. Esper Sentinel is probably the best one drop in the format, and White's probably White's best card. Definitely you could play it. It's a human. It's very, very good. Then if you play those two, you get to play Ranger Captain of Eos, which is also an exceptionally strong human, so worth it as well. Everything we talked about Boromir being able to be looped Teshar, same thing applies here. However, these cards do have, well, I guess Mom just doesn't have the budget that I always assume she does. Maybe it's because I'm thinking of Giver of Runes that might be a little more expensive. Let's see. No, they're both about $5 to $10. Okay, well, Mom, then you should definitely play Mom because that's not so bad. But Esper Sentinel and Ranger Captain are substantially more expensive, so I leave that to you to decide. And I think that's it. That is it. I do really like this deck. I think it is on a very, very straightforward direction that I really like. I think it's got some fun things about it. I like that it's food-oriented, and I like there's a few different directions we can go into. I am somewhat interested in the equipment side to it, because I think Apothecary White, I don't know why I'm opening this one, I have this one here. Apothecary White by herself is very, very powerful. So all you need for her to work alongside her is just a bunch of creatures that can attack, right? This is somewhat similar to how I play Brina, where I'm just filling the deck with the strongest cards in those colors that are creatures with the knowledge that I'm going to make very powerful attacks. The difference between these two is obviously Brina's two colors, but Brina also strengthens the creatures that attack by giving them +1/+1 counters, but gives the ability to your opponents, whereas Apothecary just wants to go as wide as possible, and probably, despite that she's in white mana, doesn't care if the creatures she attacks with dies. So with that in mind, you can go along with this kind of human synergy way. You could also play just pure tokens, where you just don't care about the creatures you attack with, because after that initial attack with Apothecary White, your creature tokens do immediately become, like, you can use those tokens to keep triggering her, right? Because you don't care if they die, because you're just going to make more, which is very, very good. And if not, cards like, Thalia, a few other cards having Mom around, you can kind of guarantee some good attacks that are hard to deal with, getting you into a really good position. Equipment, the bunnycorn, things like that naturally grow or work well with our commander without much, without us needing to devote too much space and time to them, are the direction that I think is the most powerful for this deck. But I leave that to you. I think I wanted to really look at the equipment side, but I didn't want to change the deck too much. Otherwise, I think the deck is a great first draft. I really want to see where this goes, because I think this is a really fun mono-white commander. And I really do like mono-white as a commander color, because I do like mono-colored commander decks. I find their space is really interesting. And I think this is a direction that white hasn't really gone in before, so there's a lot we can do. Once again, thank you so much, Flexa, for supporting the channel, and thank you for the deck. I hope this was very, very helpful. I'm sure I'm going to see more Clue commanders in the future, and I'm excited to see what else we can work on. All right, good luck. Thank you so much for watching. This video is brought to you by viewers like you and people on my Patreon. If you'd like to send me another draft of this deck, or any deck, there is a link in the video description down below. And if you'd like to make your deck one of my donation decks I work on, there's a link there too. Finally, if you'd like to like, comment, subscribe, I would be very appreciative. It helps the channel quite a bit. Thank you and good luck in brewing and building.